All right.
You think I should just straight up fucking... Slide over. Quick. Nice. That's Corey. 234.
Well, hello there.
Hello.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the middle of the pack barrel length. The heroes of the global war on terrorism in the Block 1, MRE, Block 2, and URGI. The barrel length most prevalent in the military service and has stacked many terrorists and enemy combatants to this day. The barrel length, a high-speed type once called the Chad barrel length. The length everyone comes back to when their short boy or 13.7 or 13.9 expedition doesn't go as planned.
Fuck.
And the barrel length everyone should have and would be well served with, but wandering eyes. Ladies and gentlemen, the 14.5 inch AR-15. We're gonna cover the pros, the middle ground, and the cons, as per usual. All right, number one in the pros category. It's dimensionally well balanced. A lot of these 14.5s are very, very nice when you're picking them up and handling them. A lot of guys are able to make some quick adjustments and get comfortable on a 14.5 because the dimensions are about right. The balance point is often right there, right by the barrel nut, which is where it should be, which is excellent. It makes maneuvering quite nice and easy. Number 2, generally speaking, almost always makes full use of its rail space. Most 14.5-inch guns, especially nowadays, are equipped with a 13.5-inch rail, which makes a very, very nice pairing and leaves only an inch of barrel exposed, which is good. It allows for ideal placement of lights and other attachments, as well as iron sights for those that still use them, which is always quite nice. You're really going to be hard pressed to find any shorter rail 14.5 out there unless it's either a clone upper or some sort of carbine length that doesn't have a low profile gas block. But you'll even see some front sight post builds that have the Daniel Defense rail, so it makes up for that, which is nice. Number 3, good all-around rifle length. And that's going to be for most reasonable intermediate range engagements from 0 to 500 yards. 500 yards is about my comfort area pushing this thing out. 600 is really, you really got to have the best round in there and the best conditions, because 600 yards, which is about 550 meters, is starting to run into the wall where the velocity kind of falls out. And realistically, most shooters can only shoot about that far anyway. Actually, most shooters can't shoot that far. And the ones with skills more than I have can reliably get out to that range, and that's about the healthy distance that you can get out there. But honestly, if you learn to shoot these things out pretty far, which is 500 yards is pretty far for a lot of people, you'll be okay. And being able to shoot close quarter engagement distance all the way out to intermediate distance is quite nice. You don't feel as handicapped as you do with a shorter barrel gun, which is, again, quite solid. This is also kind of where the general purpose rifle or jack carbine that Travis Haley tried to do with BCM there, and that whole concept comes in, where the 14.5 is good for most anything within reasonable engagement distances that you can expect out of the 5.56. Number 4, I kind of hit on the well-balanced thing a little bit because I tend to get ahead of myself, but it fits most people well while maintaining good maneuverability. You can do vehicle operations, or open area.
Hey, talk with that saw.
Or close quarter combat, quite frankly. And still feel like you're capable of doing the job that's required without being too cumbersome, while also not having a short barrel that'll make you feel unable to make longer distance engagements out to intermediate ranges. And a lot of guys that kick doors in the early Iraq invasion will tell you that when the M4s came along, it was a lot nicer than trying to drive an M16 around indoors. But an M16 can do it. It's just the M4 made it easier. So it's really nice to have that nice weight balance, the maneuverability, and the ability, once you stepped out of a close quarter environment, like I hit on the point before, you're not completely outmatched because you just have a 10.5. Easily configurable for whatever you want. I would say in 14.5 to 16-inch barrel lengths, but 14.5 is a good example because you have lightweight, middleweight, and you can get damn boy he thick real fast.
Damn boy. Damn boy he thick. Boy, that's a thick ass boy.
But you can set it up for a lot of different things and not lose out, which is nice, versus other barrel lengths where you're either running out of rail space or you're starting to get real heavy real fast with basic add-ons. And another thing that's nice with the 14.5 is you can run a dot on it. You can run a dot with a magnifier. You can run a 1 to 4, 1 to 5, 1 to 6, or you can run a 1 to 10 or 2.5 to 10 on it, and it all feels right. You're not really running into that same, this is a silly setup like you would with, say, a short barrel with big glass on it, or a 16-inch with a red dot. You kind of feel, this might be a silly build, but a 14.5, a lot of diversity and a lot of different setups in the 14.5s, which make them effective, which is nice. Number 6, this is super nice. A lot of people won't appreciate this, but some will. There's no gas port wars. The system is very, very sorted out, especially in mid-length. Mid-length, I think, is 0.076 to 0.078 or 0.0785. I know the SOCOM gas port size is 0.062. And there's a few others out there that are well dialed in, but even carbine length is pretty well sorted at this point. So you're not running into, is this going to be overgassed or is it not going to be overgassed? Most all 14.5s are going to run pretty smooth. There's some companies out there that still don't know how to drill a fucking hole to spec, but generally speaking, by and large, you're going to find very, very well sorted and well executed 14.5-inch barrels. So it's really hard to get a bad 14.5 in modern times. All right, to your middle ground, bullet velocity. It's meh with everything. This barrel length is literally the middle of the road. So you're not gonna be getting superior velocity or really slow, where you're kind of worried about how effective it's gonna be. The 14.5 is pretty good with anything. You can throw M855 in there, you can throw M193 in there. I really like Mark 318 Mod 0. That's my go-to round for my URGI. You can run 62 grain OTMs, and then you can start pushing into the heavier grain weights, and you're gonna be doing okay. For those psychopaths that insist on procuring M855A1 and running your rifle on it, you're actually going to be doing pretty well based on your barrel. The URGI cooks those rounds out of there pretty quick, and most 14.5s are going to be able to give you pretty good velocity, but it's not going to be the same velocity out of a 16-inch, 18-inch, or 20-inch. And on the flip side of that coin, you're not going to be as slow as a 12.5, 11.5, 10.5, or 10.3. And before anybody busts out that fucking 11.5 versus 14.5, I don't know what rifles they were using, but I don't know on what planet 11.5 is cooking a round out within 50 feet per second of a 14.5. I would love to see that chronograph test. I would love to see the video, not the written findings from a government agency that you all of a sudden trust, who's trying to procure 11.5s for their HRT. So I'm just saying, when you're looking at some of these tests, yeah, it's nice to grab this one federal government test, but I wouldn't necessarily trust it, especially when they have their own agenda of switching guns out. So 14.5 is generally middle of the road. You're not going to impress anybody. You're not going to disappoint. It's just very average. Next middle ground point is going to be length with a suppressor. Now, you can run a Mini 2 or CAC QDC CQB suppressor, so those are your 4-inch suppressors. You can run one of those and not get too long. You're going to be pushing around 18 inches. That's all well and good, and you'll be borderline hearing safe. It'll be better than an unsuppressed gunshot, but it's not going to be phenomenal. And prolonged use with that may not work too well for you. A lot of guys mistake tone for the lower tone being better for your ears. Some people don't understand how sound waves work. A lower tone might be cooler and sound better, which everybody likes, but at the same time, a lower tone is wider and a higher pitch tone is narrower. So do with that what you will, I guess. But with a short can, so a Mini 2 or a CAC QDC CQB, you're looking at about an 18-inch package, and with the RC2 or CAC QDC or something like that, you're looking at a 20-inch barrel. There's absolutely no way a 14.5-inch barrel with an RC2 is 20 inches. There's just no But a 14.5 is a really, really good platform for a suppressor because it's shorter than a 16 inch and it's damn sure shorter than an 18 inch or a 20 inch. So just something to think about. And the last middle ground, the 14.5 is a generic compromise. It's viewed as a generic compromise by the community and not to your typical Mark 18 builder that has 8 Mark 18 builds, but for general conversational purposes, practical applications, and just math and science, this is literally the exact middle of the road for AR-15s, and that's not going to change. And a lot of guys tout 13.7 or 13.9 or even 12.5, often skipping over a better barrel length because of this, but the 14.5 is the middle of the road option. And again, very, very flushed out, but you're not going to wow anybody with the performance. All right, cons. You're stuck with a muzzle device, which means you're usually stuck with the rail too, unless you have an LMT or a tax stamp, or you resort to
Crime.
So just keep that in mind. Barrels are rarely, if ever, pinned and welded to 16 inches on the dot because people are scared to get close to the length. So this URGI is 16.5 inches. The SD is just a touch shorter. I think it's like 16.35 inches or something like that, whatever the math came out to. It's never really going to be 16 on the dot, which is why the 13.7 and 13.9 exist, but then you're stuck with that device, so it just becomes a silly game at that point. But it's something to note because a lot of guys see this and they see the dimensions and how it appears, and it looks shorter, but it seldom is. All right, number 3, extra steps when building. So if you're building it versus buying it, you have 3 options. You either send it off to somebody reputable like D. Wilson, so you'll get a quality product, or you weld it yourself, yeesh. Or Joe Bob down the street, also yeesh. Or you do a $200 tax stamp for an SBR lower so it doesn't matter. Or I guess you could just resort to
Crime.
Number 4. There's a lot of guys that are going to press their 14.5s in a big magnification and try to SPR them. They're not your best SPR platform. There's a lot of guys that do it, and some dudes just do it so they can see the most out of their particular rifle's performance at the ranges. So it's not like I'm going to throw big glass on this and push it to 800 yards. I'm throwing big glass on this because I want to see everything I'm doing from 100 to 500. Not a big deal, but there's guys that take these to SPR matches and they don't do as well because they don't have the velocity, and you'd be much better served with an 18 or a 20 inch in an SPR match, even a 16 if you have a good one. But there's a lot of dudes that do that, or you'll notice that the 14.5 setups are changing constantly because they keep trying to find a place for this thing because they've got a bunch of different rifles. And they're like, well, my 14.5 does all this stuff good, but it doesn't do it as well as this. Or, you know, so it becomes that sort of struggle. And that kind of goes into number 5 here. Jack of all trades and master of none means jack of all trades and master of none. You're not going to be stepping out of the box doing anything crazy with these things. You might snap off a couple lucky shots here and there, and there's going to be guys that during the GWAT made some impressive shots with M855 and an ACOG out of their M4. I'm not dogging those dudes, right? But for the average person, for you, me, and everybody else watching, your 14.5 is going to be always the middle of the road. So there's going to be times where you're like, damn, man, I wish I had my 16 or my 18 right now. And then there's going to be other times where you find yourself saying, damn, man, I wish I had my 11.5 or my 12.5 right now. This building's huge. You know, you're gonna run into those, and then other times you're gonna be like, man, I've just got M855, I should have just went with a 20 inch so I can vibe check some people. And number 6, lastly, just enough barrel length to get you into trouble. I know I kind of touched on this already, but your maximum effective range for an M4 as far as the military goes, for the Navy anyhow, is 500 meters. The M16 is 550 meters for maximum effective range, not maximum range. The max effective range for an M4 is 50 meters less. And that's because they understand that there's a lot less velocity with a 14.5 inch barrel versus your 20 inch barrel. So A lot of times you have something that can get most of the way there and you're like, it's not that much farther. So you try to take that shot, and if you have any wind or atmospheric conditions or any of that weird stuff where you're shooting through a valley or something like that, you're gonna find you're missing just that little bit of oomph that you would need to get it done, which you can get out of the 16 or the 18 or the 20 for sure. So you're kind of running into that performance wall that if you start getting skilled enough, you'll discover. Not everybody's gonna run into it. Some people are gonna think I'm crazy, but there's dudes that have really pushed the envelope on these and they're gonna say, yeah, I mean, it's not as effective. I could still do it, but I had to work harder, or shut up, you suck.
You suck!
Something, but these do not push the bullet as far or as fast as the longer barrel lengths. It is what it is. Okay, brands. Purchasing. Just buying the whole rifle. You already know my low end, mid tier, and high end, but just to go over it, the low tier, this is my basic entry level for duty use in order. So Aero Precision, Fabrique Nationale, or BCM. That's minimum height to ride right there. Next in middle class is Daniel Defense, Centurion, Noveski, and Geisley. Somebody asked me about ADM last time. I don't have any experience with them, but they use Criterion barrels. So if you like it, buy it and let me know how it runs. But I haven't had the opportunity yet. Not saying they're bad, I just haven't shot them, so I can't say anything. Your high class, your upper tier is going to be LMT, HK, and Knights Armament. Radian floats between upper middle class and high class, but the problem is, like, I don't know, Radian's had some issues lately that people are gonna go back and forth on in the comments, and again, I haven't run a Radian, so I don't know. Alright, if you're building it, you're buying a barrel. FN, Ballistic Advantage Hansen profile. They're regular barrels for some reason. They forget what gas port sizes are. It's embarrassing. Daniel Defense, Criterion, Centurion, and then send it to D. Wilson with a muzzle device that you will forever love and will fit any future suppressor you might want to buy. At the end of the day, yes, the 14.5 is the Chad barrel length. It's good at what it does, but other do it better in their respective categories. Experts, average shooters, and novices alike can run it well. You can hand almost anybody a 14.5, it's going to fit them because it's remarkably average. 14.5s are like a dude that's going to enjoy fine dining just as much as making dinner in the microwave. They're remarkably average and consistent performance that won't leave you wanting, but wondering, what if I went with something else instead for my particular application? To get the peak range or velocity or the speed and maneuverability I need. A barrel length that during the GWAT rose quickly through the ranks to save the day, but frequently gets left behind for newer offerings. The barrel length that was cool because it felt like skirting the rules without actually skirting the rules when it first came out to the civilian markets, and that made people ditch the 16, 18, and 20 inch when it came out. But then they soon realized being the middle of the pack only appeals to single moms, or the almost was crowd. It's the B squad pick that does a good, admirable job and will always be there when you need it, but you know there's an A squad pick out there. The barrel length, that is me. I am this barrel length. Thanks for watching. Take care out there.